Hi everyone, my name is Phoebe Hopkinson and today I'm going to be reviewing and critiquing the movie The Breakfast Club, which is a 1985 classic directed by John Hughes. So let's dive into it. I wanted to first start off by talking about the mess-in scene. So during the mess-in scene, obviously the setting is a library, and at first it feels very cold, not welcoming, and we can physically feel the emotional distance of the characters through the setting. There's barriers, vastness between the characters. However, Hughes does a really good job of using the environment to reflect character development, because as we see those characters develop, the library starts to feel much less of a cold place, and it feels more intimate and closer. And I think that with limited settings, it was really important that he pulled off making the environment feel the same as the character development. So that said, let's move on to talking about the character development, because I think it's one of the film's greatest strengths, using the characters to tell the story. There's a very strong use of personal dialogue and monologues from the characters, and considering there's not a lot of thrill or action or different settings to the movie, it's really important that Hughes gets the story and message across through these characters and through their words. And I think he did a masterful job of doing that and using character-driven storytelling through dialogue. And we get these stereotypical completely different types of kids, but at the end we see that everyone is just a kid and we can all relate to them in the same way. So that said, it's important to then talk about the cinematography, because rather than using crazy shots, mobile framing, and all these different types of camera shots, we see a lot of tight close-ups and static camera shots to really emphasize emotional intimacy and forcing the audience to confront these raw confessions that we see from the characters. I think the static camera shots really allow people to focus on what the characters are saying and to really take it in. And I think that's important because, like I said, that was the main way that Hughes told the story. So it's important that people are able to focus on things such as dialogue and monologues, rather than having all these crazy shots. So I thought that was done really, really well. And so then I also wanted to talk about the editing, because it's simple, but it's almost deceptive. Hughes relies on clean continuity editing that maintains the natural flow of the story. We have cross-cutting between small groups during those intense moments, but it keeps the dynamic alive, letting us feel like we're right there, shifting with people, moving with them and their thoughts. And then that said, I thought he did a really good job using sound design to set the tone of the film. There is a lot of societal pressure, because although we see the kids, all there together on this Saturday, come Monday, they might be strangers again. And I think the sound, sets the tone and deepens the emotional impact of them being so vulnerable, but also the reality that, they might not be friends come Monday. So I think ultimately The Breakfast Club was powerful because it captured something universal, the theme of the desperate teenage need to be seen, the need to be understood, the need to be accepted. And I think that's why people like my mom love it so much, and how I can still relate to it at the same time as my mom. Everyone can relate to that, to being a teenager. So it's not just, nostalgia that keeps the film alive, it's that careful writing and performance from the characters, because it's important that they're humanized through their dialogue and that we can relate to them on a personal level. So I think that was my review of The Breakfast Club. I've seen it quite a few times and I still love it to this day. Thank you.